You just got to come to terms with that the only constant out there is change. And you just got to learn to be comfortable with it. I got really focused on the today. That's where I just started to show up every day and say, you got to be your best self. I just got to embrace change and make that a strength. That was the game changer for me.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of High Stakes with Steve Rozenberg. Super excited. One of the reasons I even do this whole podcast, selfishly, is I like to meet new people. And this is kind of the way that I can go out and I can meet people kind of all over the world. And it's kind of cool because you get to hear their stories. I always say, being an airline pilot and traveling all over the world, I pop into a city, I sit and have coffee, I watch the world go by, and I think, every single one of these people has a story behind them. Everybody has a story. Everyone has they have a past, they have a present, and they have a future. It's like a bubble that just follows them around. And so I'm always intrigued by, if I just stop someone that I didn't know and just start talking to them, what is their story? Who are they? What do they do? Right. And so I love having new guests on the show because I kind of get to hear their story. And we can kind of hear what they're doing, what their challenges are in life, because the reality is we all have them. Some of us just talk about them and others don't. So today we have Rich Holland on. Rich, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here, bud.
Steve, pleasure. Looking forward to the discussion.
So if you don't mind, let's just start. Kind of tell us, your quick bio, who you are, what you do, what you're famous for, and then we can kind of deep dive a little bit.
Okay, that's great. So, Steve, listen, it's great to be on the show. And I don't know that my background is of keen interest to your team out there, but let me just give you some of the highlights, right? So, really, I grew up the son of an IBM engineer back in the mid 60s. And I was fortunate to be his oldest son. I have four brothers, but my father believed, hey, you should follow in the family business, which is technology and automation. And back there, it was pretty primitive, right? It was punch cards, it was tape. But he taught me how to be a software developer. So when I got into high school, which is in the late 70s, I was actually a software developer. And it was pretty heady. A young kid, I'd get on a flight on a Friday and go and install code in California when I lived in Utah. But that got me exposed to the world of business. And I found it to be incredibly intriguing. I'd go into different businesses. You'd kind of figure out what made them tick, what they did. You'd see guys who were excellent operators, others that you'd have to wonder, gosh, how do they even stay in business? And so you learned a lot of life lessons there. And then I got into my education and then into the business world. And it just accelerated at that point. And so I was very fortunate. I got into an industry that I loved, which was automotive. So I got to apply technology into the automotive space. It put me around cars, which I had a real passion for. And it brought me into, gosh, maybe over the course of my career, let's call it 6,000 car dealerships. And I started my own company, sold it in the late 90s or the 2007, started in the 90s, sold it in 2007, and effectively retired, right? It was one of my crazy ambitions to be retired before you were 50. Silly in hindsight. I was unsuccessful at that and realized, gosh, I just have too much energy, too many things I want to do, learn too many lessons, have too many scars to show for it, that I ought to come back into the business world and do what I do, which is for the last 15, 16 years have been helping businesses that are underperforming sort of refactor themselves, get focused on what it takes to be successful, and bring them through. I'm on my sixth one today. It's brought me to South Florida, which my wife and I love the warm weather in the winters. And although we used to love the snow in Utah during the winter, since we don't ski anymore, now it's just aggravating. And so over the course of that career, and I'll be honest, I'm in the last few innings of my career, if not the final one. A lot of lessons that I've learned that, listen, happy to share a few of those things with you if you have any interest to your audience today.
So let me ask you this. You've obviously been on, we'll say, quite a journey, right, in life. I mean, you've seen transitions from punch cards to AI, and I know AI's existed for a while, but you've seen it going to the mainstream, right? And
Yes.
I'm sure in there you've had quite a few successes and maybe some challenges. Is there a part of your journey that nobody claps for, nobody knows about, but it kind of changed everything for you internally?
Yeah, I think for me, it was the realization that, gosh, life is just in a constant state of evolution. And if you really get too thoroughly entrenched in the current, I'll just call it technology, the current technology, and lose your curiosity or the ability to learn, before too long you age out, right? Your skill set becomes tarnished and out of date, and it can happen in, earlier in my career it took in a decade, then it became 5 years, now it's 3 years, now it might be 90 days. I mean, it's just a constant need to be continually reinventing yourself and keeping your skill set sharp. And I think I learned that lesson back when I started a company. The paradigm at the time then was is everyone had a big server in their dealership and everything was hardwired back to it. And it was a proprietary platform, and it happened to coincide with a technological transformation where the internet was just becoming online. Right? I know Al Gore invented it, but in all reality, it wasn't generally accepted at the time. And I decided to change the premise and say, no, I think you should just have effectively a supercomputer in the cloud, and a client could attach to that and run their business. And so that was a big paradigm shift. It changed the economics, changed a lot of things. And then we were first to market with something like that. And that model, now we'd call it SaaS or shared services or Azure or any of those other things. For me, that was in the mid 90s, and it was a game changer for me. It really reinforced that you got to constantly change. And even since then, it's had to be reinvented a number of times since then. But I think it's also to be unafraid, to look forward and say, gosh, here is something, has a lot of promise, lots of problems and challenges, but if you can overcome them, it can be a real advantage for you.
Let me ask you, you've obviously seen a lot of industries, obviously two that we just off the top of my head, which is the car
Hmm.
industry, and the tech industry, we'll call it, go through quite a few metamorphoses of evolutions, we'll call them.
Yeah,
Um, did you ever kind of hang your hat on one and think like, okay, the way I think of it is like you anchor on something and all of a sudden that anchor moves. And now you're
yeah.
like, I got to relearn this. And like you had said, like it goes from, it starts speeding up faster and it goes faster and faster and faster. And now you start realizing like, I have to keep pedaling faster. It's not slowing down. It is speeding up. How
Yeah,
did
I
you
think
handle that mentally?
that's a great question, because that is what's so interesting is that those who grow up in a technology space, which is what I officially did, your work product is change, right? Writing new stuff, creating new solutions. And it's amazing how resistive, though, that those developers are to actual personal change. And so to cope with it mentally, you just got to come to terms with that the only constant out there is change. And you just got to learn to be comfortable with it. So the way that I did it is that I got really focused on the today, right? The urgency of today. And so an expression that I use a lot is win the one, meaning today. You can't really worry too much about with regrets of the things you didn't get done previously, and you keep an eye on the future, but don't live in the future. And so I think that's where I just started to show up every day and say, you got to be your best self. You got to take advantage of the circumstances and the facts the way they are and lean in on it. And when I made that transition, which took you out of this, I love precision and consistency and processes, to say, no, I just got to embrace change and make that a strength. That was the game changer for me.
If you didn't choose the path, like you said, your dad kind of chose
Hmm.
this or maybe guided you or to
Yeah.
this path. Any idea where you think you'd be right now if it wasn't this?
Yeah, this is the old woulda, coulda, shoulda. When you look
Yeah.
back and say, oh, there were a few windows of opportunity that, or doors that you opted not to walk through. And I have a few of those. And I'll tell you one that's probably the most interesting. At least I think it is for me personally. It's the one of my, it might be a regret, right? Not that I haven't had a terrific career and I'm grateful for all of it's enabled me to do. But when I was in college, I was paying for my own education. And because I had some unique skills, and let me back up a little bit. I had been recruited to be a Division I athlete at a university. And when I showed up there, it was after a couple years of voluntary service. I'd lost some weight, and they looked at me and said, "Gosh, you're just not 185 anymore." And so I had a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, so I opted to change schools. And so I went from that time, which would have been Brigham Young, to the University of Utah. But I missed my affiliation with the football program. So when I was a junior, the athletic director actually had approached me via an introduction from IBM and said, "Gosh, you've got a student on campus up there that understands how to write software. Why don't you use them?" And so I got involved writing tendency software for the University of Utah football program. And I really enjoyed it. I liked the camaraderie of being in college sports again. Was pretty good at it, right? And my senior year, the AD came to me and said, "Hey, Rich, you've got a real knack for this coaching, for being around football. I think you should consider a career in coaching football."
Huh.
And I was stupid then. I loved it. It was a passion for me. I was good at it, but I was chasing the dollar. And I was like, "Listen, I write software on the side and make more money than the like 2x what the starting salary would be for a football coach." And so I took the short-term win and said, "Let me go and pursue a professional career." And that's the path I put my feet on. Looking back now, I'm like, gosh, you see what they pay head coaches in college football these days? I'm not sure that I chased. I don't sure. Yeah, the players. No, I'm not sure that chasing the money was the right rationalization then, because if you'd have had the vision to say, "Gosh, this is what the money will look like later," probably a more it would have been a fun career to have been associated with, and I think I would have been enjoyed some success coaching football. And
That's cool.
so that's the one of the woulda, coulda, shouldas. If you had that to do over, that would be one.
Okay. Now, normally, like as entrepreneurs, right? We get to points of frustration, despair, hatred, elation, all in one day. Sometimes before noon, right? And we're like, "What time tomorrow? Are we doing this again?" And I'm sure you, like everybody, probably had a point in your life that you're like, "Is this worth it? I'm done. Maybe get a job, whatever it is." But when you had that point in your life, at some variation, not saying that was the point, but was there a version of you that had a certain set of beliefs that is different than today?
Yeah, I think mine might have been the inverse, right? I left college, went to work at a business, and got so bogged down in its politics, red tape, pace, all of those things, that to me, that's what was frustrating to me, is that I felt like there was so much more we could accomplish than what we were doing there. And then an opportunity came where that business happened to go through an ownership change, and they made an offer for me to relocate to a different part of the country that I really wasn't interested in doing. And that forced me to say, "What the flip are you going to do?" Right? That sort of was that decisive moment. And I did, kind of reflected back, took some time, thought about what excited me to do to work, what challenged me intellectually, what did I find that I was able to be really could do well at, and concluded, gosh, you know what you need, as risky and as scary as it is. I mean, I was newly married, newlywed, I guess. We'd been married a few years, had a baby on the way, and like, you know what I need to do is I need to go do my own thing and take this leap of faith out to become your own owner of your own business. And so you had to figure out an idea and run with it. And that for me was that inflection point that caused me to go the other way. Since then, I don't know that I've had that day where it's like, you know what, it's all just too much effort, too much work. I'm going to throw in the towel and surrender. It's for me has been something and maybe I just thrive on the challenge, right? Let's do things that have never been done before or overcome challenges that seem insurmountable. It probably is speaks a lot to what I've done lately, which is take underperforming or businesses and turn them into elite execution, because that's what drives me, right? So I think you're right. I think the premise of your question, is what you do align with your core values, and when that happens, it's easy work.
Yeah, like let me ask you this. As and again, I think it's so interesting because you've transitioned different industries, right? Tech
Yeah,
and cars, and I'm sure there's probably various ones inside of there. Um, I'll give you an example. Myself being an airline pilot, um, different ideologies of customer service as opposed to different levels of transportation, different
yeah,
ways the aircraft operates, all those things. Every time I had to level up, I had to let go of something
yeah,
of a past
yeah,
to be open to the new future, right? Whether it was the old dial gauges to electronic cockpits to building businesses and scaling and saying, what if I was wrong? Like, what if that old belief just was not correct anymore?
yeah.
Are there any things like you that you've had to think about and let go of to become the person you are today?
Yeah, there are lots of those things, right? Because I do think what ends up happening is you develop, let's just call it prejudices, right? If this way that is my belief that this is the right way to do them, and those things all have a shelf life, and eventually that shelf life expires, and you have to supersede them with more current practices, processes, technology, whatever those happen to be. I could look back right now and say the way that you used to interact with customers has evolved a lot just in the last 20 years, and
Right.
it's a problem today.
Yeah.
I have a brand new sales team here that's always, frankly, looking for the easy button, that elegantly worded email that causes customers to just say, "I want to buy," right? And those just don't exist. So even some of the old practices of, hey, this is a personal business, you got to shake their hands, look them in the eye, have lunch with them, build a rapport. That's actually becoming restored from what we've probably tried to get rid of over the last 20 years by saying just replace it with email or text messaging or a clever word, website. But for me, I think your question for me, the way I would interpret it is I have finite capacity, whether it's time or energy. And some of those things that don't serve as well as they used to, you can't hold them as sacred. You got to say that practice has got to go, and you got to make you got to make capacity for the new stuff. And a lot of things have changed.
When it comes to success, and obviously you do a very good job of pivoting. It looks like is there something you used to believe that you say isn't true
Yeah,
anymore,
I'll give you one.
or maybe
Go
one that
back.
almost ruined you, one that almost took
Yeah,
you down?
I can tell you one that, frankly, it was one I was compelled to learn.
Okay.
Right, and me and a lot of my peers. I was the CEO of a business in 2019, going into 2020, of about 500 person in office team. COVID hit, and I remember sitting in my office there. It was in Atlanta at the time. I had my CITO with me, who also happened to be lived in Utah, and here we are in this Atlanta office. It's mid-March. COVID. We had yet to have a fatality in the U.S. And I remember he and I were sitting in there, and I'm like, you know what? We have got to flip the switch on this business and convert to a work from home model, or we're going to be out of business in 30 days.
Wow.
Prior to that, I would have said there is no way to effectively run a company without that ability. Tom Peters used to say, this management by wandering around, where you just walked the floors, met people, talked to them. To convert to a all virtual company, I didn't think it was doable. But as we sat there, I think we read up our personal credit cards, bought hundreds of every, frankly, laptop computer we could get in the area, and went from a in-office business to a virtual one in about 72 hours with about a week to spare. Because my concern is that President Trump, first time around, was going to say, hey, we're just shutting down the airlines since that's the super spreader. And we were going to be driving back from Atlanta to Utah and really scrambling. So that was for me an enormous paradigm shift. I had to give up on the work in office is the only way you could do business. To work from home was a viable option. And it couldn't be just sustain business. You had to figure out how to thrive in your company in that model. And so we learned a lot of practices, reinvented lots of things the way we did business. And then after I was with that business, went to another one, similar, 4 big offices, and said, gosh, this is wasteful. We ought to just get everyone to work from home. And so we morphed that business into a total work from home. Now here, the one I'm with now is in Florida. They didn't get COVID apparently in Florida because they never went to the work from home model. And so then it was a restoration of having to think more about running a company with everyone in place. And so I think for me, that was a real wake up call, and I was compelled, right? I would never voluntarily have done that. I'd have been a slow adopter until this next generation of workers demanded it. But now I view it as a resource, a tool it's an arrow in the quiver of how to really get effective in a business. So it's changed a lot of things.
Yeah. So what's your philosophy now? Is it a hybrid model? Is
It's
it a
a
case by
hybrid.
case or?
It's a hybrid. What it did say to me is don't view talent as a localized pool of talent, right? Think, frankly, without boundaries, right? Because the technology enables us to be close, even though we may have hundreds or thousands of miles between us. And so we employ people, literally now the sun never goes down on this business because we have people all around the world who work for this business and we find the best talent. And so that has definitely changed. But I do have a number in office here. You can maybe collaborate easier when you're problem solving to pull just sort of a half a dozen people together, put them in a room and thrash it out pretty quickly. But I think that combination of those two has been a real enabler for us to do things that before we would have been unable to have achieved.
Okay. So let's talk about what you're doing now. What from a higher level, from a person level, what gets you up fighting every day? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you don't need to do this. You probably, I'm guessing you
right.
like doing this.
Yep, you're right. I do it out of choice. I mean, I'm in a fortunate circumstances where I do it voluntarily. Don't do it volunteer, but I do it voluntarily. And so someone gave me some really sage advice just after I had sold my business. And he said to me, you ought to look for problems worth solving. Right? If you're going to throw your time at it, make it worthwhile, make it impactful. And for me, how I define that has evolved. Maybe it's the more older I get, I get as much satisfaction today about readying the next generation to run a business like this as I do on running a business like this. And so what gets me up every day, listen, we don't lack for challenges, whether they're opportunities or solving for problems that we've created or that exist out there. And I'll probably spend, if I look now, the Rich of today versus the Rich of 10 years ago, I spend probably the majority of my time, greater than half my time, training, teaching, working with team members, and then less of it on actually being involved in solving the problems. Whereas 10 years ago, I would have done 95% the problem solving and made a little investment in the team. The lesson that I learned from that is if you want to get scale, you want to get leverage, it's get a bunch of qualified people and then get out of their way. And so that's sort of my operating cadence today. And it actually gives you exponential opportunity.
Is there a different version of the way you would define success, like you said, maybe 10 years ago for you?
Yeah.
And is it different today than it was before?
Yeah, certainly. I think Listen, I fell into the trap that most do is there are symbols of success, right? You wear an expensive watch, you drive a fast car, you live in a big house, and they're all superficial, right? Let's just use the one. I had an ambition to retire before I was 50, right? In hindsight, pretty stupid. And so today it's more about, and frankly, this is what scares me about retiring for the final time is how do you have a life full of intent, full of meaningful contribution, where you make an impact, right? How do you go from doing something like that? And that's what I think I measure it by more today. Did I show up today and make the place a better place? And granted, I have a great compensation package, but I don't do it for the money anymore. And so I do it more for, what can you pass on? How do you pass the torch to the next group? Can you leave an impact? And and then I worry about when I do retire, how do you replace that? Because there is an exhilaration from when you see that, when you start to when your success is the success of others and you're exhilarated by that. That's, I think, the pinnacle of leadership. And today I get to operate in that area where I get as much or more satisfaction as seeing my team be successful as what the success that I've seen in my career.
So let's talk about what you're doing now. Tell me what you got going on now at this stage of your professional career, and tell me how
Yeah.
that aligns with your personal endeavors.
Yeah. So I think this is my last rodeo. As I mentioned earlier, this will be my sixth business that I've been involved with since selling my original business, and it's always been recruited into them from a private equity sponsor. And this one's a unique one. They're very different from the other ones. This one has more of a long-term, permanent. Let's create something that lasts the test of time. Whereas my other ones were all, let's do it, build it up, sell it, make some money, and move on. This one, which just gives a different interaction with your sponsor, but because they say, think of it as your own business and run it like it was your own company and make long-term decisions. And so that's been really been exciting. When we were looking for an opportunity, my wife and I, we were talking about where do we go during the cold winter months in Utah to somewhere warm, and we were looking at Florida and Arizona, or at California and Arizona, and then a Florida opportunity came up. It was really not on our radar, and so we came down. Love it down here, especially in the winter months. And then just it was at a challenge that I could contribute to pretty quickly, and so I tend to. This has just been my formula. Not saying this is the one people should use, but for me, I look for opportunities that are 1,000 days. And for me, 1,000 days is about the length of my attention span. So I sign up for those, and I spend the first 10% or 100 days sort of analyzing the business, asking lots of questions, learning, figuring it out, developing a roadmap, and then the final 900 days executing it. And I set some pretty ambitious objectives, and it really comes down to, did you see it as clear as you thought you did? Or there's some surprises you hadn't anticipated? How willing is the team to embrace change? And if they are, you can do some magical things. And we've been very fortunate here. The team's really appreciated it, really understood it. We're ahead of pace. Actually, I surpassed the milestone that I set for myself in September of this year. And so I've still got lots of time left to continue to build on top of that. But it's a great little bit. It's not even a little business. I mean, we're doing $500 million in sales this year. So it's a meaningful little business, and we've done. This has been a tough year for most businesses. For us, profitability's up like 70%, and so the team, and I credit the team. Right? So,
Do you feel at this stage in your life and in your career, you've turned into more of the mentor,
yeah,
passing the torch to the younger next up and coming generation?
very much so. I define myself as a coach. That
Yeah.
I'm more of a coach. And there are different roles that people, for me, I actually teach a concept here of there's 6 types of leadership styles, and the one that I use is the coach, because you're able to, through experience and whatever, you're able to see things maybe they can't see, just like a coach can see that. You help a team member understand those. We use that concept of let's turn that weakness into a strength through drills and help them go out and execute. But at the end of the day, it's the players or it's the team out on the field and the coaches on the sideline. And that's the way I view leadership for me. And even though they give me this title of CEO, look at that, the chief executive or executor in the business, I don't do a lot of day-to-day execution, right? I TO that over to the rest of the team to do. And so I coach them up and get out of their way.
It's interesting. It's almost a full circle moment
Yeah.
for you back from the days in Utah when you thought of being a coach, and it's kind of you wonder. I always think, and I've had a lot of people here that have had similar tracks, and you wonder, would I have been a good coach without knowing the X amount of years in between that date and today? And
Yeah.
obviously that, experience in life breeds a lot, but you think, wow, I really didn't know anything compared to what I know now.
Yeah.
Um,
I make that observation all the time. If I could just go back 20 years and apply what I know now to where I was 20 years ago, how that would have changed the trajectory of things. So now I try to teach the team, gosh, if your wisdom could somehow pick up where my experience and my scars leave off, you could just really accelerate what you like to do.
so in that vein, is there something that you wish someone told you earlier on that you're like, man, if I would have learned this, I could have, whether it's happiness, financial aptitude, whatever it is, but you're like, gosh, I wish somebody would have told me this.
Yeah, I think had someone, and I'm not really saying that I struggled with this, but had someone embraced personal honesty, being honest with yourself, right? Being humble much earlier in my 20s, right? Where there you kind of were a hot shot, you knew everything, you were frankly uncoachable during your 20s. If someone would have said, set that person aside and be really humble, be a sponge, find really great mentors, listen to their advice, seek out, have enough self-confidence to lay your vulnerabilities out there, you could have really, you could have really, you could really have accelerated your personal development. Instead, you have to be almost compelled to be humble. You got to make a lot of mistakes, stub your toes, scuff your knees, because you just are so resistant to learning the lesson. So you have to learn it the hard way. If I had it to do over, I'd be a lot more humble and vulnerable.
Yeah. Do you find sometimes, for lack of a better term, wanted to the younger version saying, like, if you just listen to me, I have been there. I am
Yep.
trying to save you. Do you find that, or do you just say they're going to have to learn the lesson? Like, what's the?
Well, let me just use this on a personal level. So I have 5 kids. And of my 5 kids, they span the spectrum from I'm the rock star, hot shot, uncoachable rock star kid to the one who is like, I can't learn fast enough. Just tell me more stuff, and everywhere in between. And my wife and I will talk about it. Gosh, if just this son happened to be more coachable, we could help him really navigate his career. But frankly, he doesn't listen to anything. And you have another one who has a unbelievably robust career and worse, but he literally will, not that he just takes it at face value, but he seeks it out, right? He has that consumption mentality of, I just can't get enough help and I can't be humble enough. And there's quite a contrast that I just sit there, literally one arm's length removed, and see the different results that those type of attitudes have. And even though they're all raised in the same household, you'd think they'd be similar, but they're very different. And I see that, gosh, I have 350 team members here, same spectrum, right? Those that do the very best are the ones that are the most vulnerable and the most hungry and most humble. The ones that struggle the most are the ones who are uncoachable.
Interesting. For someone who's listening, and maybe they're that version of you, then they're stuck in that, we'll say that survival
Yeah.
mode. And
Yeah.
any advice, any truth that you think they need to hear?
Yeah. I think there's one, right? And this recording's a timely one because tomorrow I actually host a class internally here. We call it the Dawn Patrol because we make people come in an hour early, volunteer, and I share with them a leadership principle. Tomorrow we're going to talk about defining your core values and a drill or two to go through that very exercise because most don't do it, right? They don't understand till maybe late in life that, gosh, if I had have run my life more in harmony with what foundationally I really believed, I would have had a lot more, I would have enjoyed more happiness, maybe happiness, less uncomfortable situations. And so we're going to put them through that tomorrow. If I was to say, if there's any one thing, I think that's a really important thing to get clear in your mind, right? Because it'll help guide you in all of the major decisions. Who your partner is, what you do for a living, where you live, where maybe you go to school, what vocation, skill set to get on with. In my life, I learned that lesson the hard way. I chased the wrong thing early on. Now it worked out well for me, but and it's crazy. If I asked 100 of there'll be 100-ish that'll show up there tomorrow. If I said by the show of hands, how many of you could tell me what your core values are right now? Out of 100, what would you guess? How many would raise their hand?
From my experience of working with businesses, I would say less than 5.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it'll be 2.
I
Two
was
will
going to say 3,
I think I
but
have it. And that's probably being too generous. It's probably 1 in 100.
yeah.
And if you could get that part clear early as you could in your career, and it'll evolve, but earlier in your career, I think you just make better decisions. So.
Yeah, and the way I was taught, and being a business coach as well, I talk about what do you do when no one's looking?
Yeah.
What will you stand for, and what for a business, it's like, what do you hire for and what do you fire for? In my opinion,
is integrity one of those core values? That's the test you're laying out there, right?
Absolutely.
You profess integrity when everyone can see what's going on, but look, and there's plenty of examples of those who ran private lives weren't congruent with their professional lives, and it blew up in their face.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you've got to be congruent. One thing that someone taught me when I was younger, and I never forgot it, he said, when you go to the grocery store, are you the guy that not just puts your cart back by the car, but you actually take it back into the supermarket and put it back in line?
Yeah.
That's when no one's watching. You're doing everything right by just putting it back in the stall in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, what's your integrity? What are your core values? And I never forgot. And every time I do that, I always go right back into the store and I always put it back. And I always remember
when
that.
when did you learn that lesson?
That was probably 2000. I just gotten furloughed from the airline. So that was 2001. So about 2002. So 23 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think there's a lot of like that training. Like I remember I had my grandfather one time and he walked to the mall, which for him was about a half a mile walk, bought something, got home and realized that they had given him too much change back. Right. And let's go back 30 years, 40 years ago. So maybe he got 50 cents more in change than what he was entitled to. His integrity said, I got to walk back and make this right and return the 50 cents. So for me, that was a lesson I learned. I was just a little kid back then, maybe my 10, 12 years old, but it made such an impression on me. That was the level of honesty that my grandfather operated on, that it became part of my core values because of that. That's a lesson you learned when you're highly impressionable. And a lot of the core values, that's where they tend to have originated is when you're really impressionable. They, sometimes they shape your views, your prejudices, what's important to you. But
yeah, no, this is great. Well, Rich, I really appreciate your time today. I think a lot of people can learn a lot about the way of life and how you've lived and what you do. And I just want to thank you personally for your time, because I think that's our most valuable asset. And the fact that you gave myself and our audience is really, it means a lot. And I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that, Steve. Yeah, we use an expression here that time is the currency of achievement. So spend it wisely. And this has been a wise use of my time, and I appreciate your efforts and initiatives here. So thanks, Steve. Great to spend time with you.
Thank you. And for everyone watching, thank you for watching another episode of High Stakes with Steve Rozenberg. We will have, Rich's information. And if you want to see more about what he's doing and keep up with him, that'd be great. And again, remember, you never know where the person that walks past you, again, just like we just learned, they've got a whole story behind them, and we've got to follow that story. And you only learn by asking questions, being inquisitive, realizing it's not about you. It's never about you. It's about what you can contribute and what others can contribute to the greater cause. So, Rich, thank you for your time today. Thank everyone for watching High Stakes with Steve Rozenberg, and we will see you next week on another episode.